Welcome to the Four Bells Fitness Emporium. Here we are at workout from home number 44. So many workouts have passed and we are currently in a glorious GPP phase before hopefully we get to reopen our doors to the public and have all of you wonderful people come back into the gym. Whether you're a friend of ours or soon to be a new friend, come join us soon. You'll love it here. It's quite wonderful. Today we are looking at an upper body focus where we are putting an emphasis on shoulder stability, a little bit of ab work, a little bit of unilateral balance. We are going to start off with a simple little warm-up that we have been doing since day number 1, June 5th, 2017 was the day the gym opened, and we did this warm-up then. It is the 4 out of 5 rights of Tibetan yoga. So the 4 out of 5 rights of Tibetan yoga was I suppose introduced to Western culture 100 or so years ago. I could be wrong with the exact dates. But really what it's meant to do is be an anti-aging system, which really means it covers a big majority of general mobility and flexibility needs. So of course, if you come to me with something very specific, I've got some tension in my pronator teres, it's not going to address that. It's going to cover a lot of general things. So if you have something very specific, send us a message, we're happy to help, but of course see a professional if you have some crazy stuff going. When it comes to the 4 out of 5 rights of Tibetan yoga, the first one of the rights, and the one we don't do, is spinning in a circle. Actually, I suppose if it's clockwise, it should be spinning in a circle that way. If we are doing that spinning in a circle, apparently it's meant to invigor your vortexes or your chakras, but as I always like to say, you can spin your chakras in your time, not my time. So we forget the spinning and we move on to the other 4, which I think are great. They cover hip flexor activation, ab activation, hip flexor mobility, hamstring flexibility, spinal flexibility, shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, a bunch of those big bang for your buck movements, which we all need when we are preparing to be mobile and strong people. So I'm going to go through the 4 movements very quickly. And the idea today is we are going to do 10 reps of each of these movements twice. So according to those Tibetan monks, the minimum effective dose is 21. We're going to do 2 sets of 10 of each, that's 20. If you want to do an extra one, feel free to do that. I'm definitely not going to stop you. We start off with a simple leg raise. Slightly different to how you would normally do a leg raise in one of our strength pieces or our conditioning pieces. What I'm really trying to do here is put a little bit of emphasis on spinal flexion, and also not necessarily worry about keeping constant tension on the hip flexors and the abs. So I've got 2 ways to approach it. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through my feet to the wall in front of me, almost like a little hollow body position. I'm going to have my hands underneath my bum. I'm going to pull my toes up towards my face, lift up, looking through the legs, and then relax down to the floor. So I can relax the heels entirely on the floor if I want to. Lift up, and then come down. If that's easy, hands out to the side, raise the legs up, try to keep the legs as straight as possible. So we're going to do 10 reps of that. From there into the hilariously titled but very effective dynamic camel, where we're looking to stretch out the quads, the hip flexors and the low abs. I'm going to hinge at the hip, drive the hips forward, squeeze the glutes, lean back and feel a big stretch up through that anterior chain. Hinge at the hip, drive the hips forwards and lean back, looking up to the ceiling. 10 reps of that bad boy. From there into the tabletop. You've probably seen a tabletop a lot over the last few weeks. Legs out in front. First question is, can I sit here comfortably? If I can't, it might be because your hamstrings and your calves are a little bit tight, so spend some time stretching those as well. Hands by the hips, and the hands can be forwards, to the side, backwards, whatever works best for you. I'm going to press the hands into the floor so that the bum comes off the floor a little bit. I come up into a tabletop position, open the shoulders, open the hips, come down, bum comes through the hands, and we come up into the next rep. 10 of those bad boys. Last but not least, down dog to up dog, known as the pump in Tibetan yoga. Hips up to the ceiling, stretching out the calf and the hamstring, opening the shoulders, hips come down to the floor, we arch up to the ceiling, looking up. Hips up, hips down, and hips back up. That's 1 rep, and we're going to do that 10 times 2. So, leg raise, camel, tabletop, the pump. We're doing those for 10 reps for 2 rounds. With the strength piece today, it's a focus on the upper body, but we're taking a good look at single limb stability and strength. So the Turkish Get-Up, a great exercise to build stability and balance in both shoulders. So that's what we're going to spend some time doing Turkish Get-Ups today. We are going to also take a look at some one-arm ring rows, make sure we balance out our upper body pulling as much as possible. So we're going to start with our 5 sets today, each set being 3 minutes long, split into 2 90-second windows of time. So in my first 90 seconds, I'm going to do 1 on one side and then 1 on the other of a Turkish Get-Up. 90 seconds should be plenty of time for you to go from the floor to standing and back down on both sides. From there, in our second 90 seconds, we're going to do some one-arm ring rows, and we're going to play around with really finding the most difficult position for you to do ring rows with. And of course, if you don't have rings or a TRX to use, then you could do, I'd probably say, try and do some kind of one-arm row. So that could be with a barbell, if you have a landmine setup, for example, or you can shove your barbell into the corner of a room, or it could be with dumbbells, or even kettlebells. Either way, single arm rowing is the aim of the game. The benefit, of course, with the ring row is that we get to work a little bit of anti-rotation at the same time. But that's another story for another day. Let's talk about Turkish Get-Ups today. With our Turkish Get-Up, you guys should know that there's a lot of subtle nuances to the Turkish Get-Up, but there is 6 points that go from the floor to standing. So of course, if you're struggling with your Turkish Get-Up, you're finding that you're losing balance or something's going wrong, feel free to send us a message and we will happily take a look at your Turkish Get-Up video. From here, when I'm looking at Turkish Get-Ups, starting with whatever side you feel is the least mobile, the least stable, the least strong. So that should always be the focus, do that weaker side first. So I'm going to start when I lay down, I'm going to take my dumbbell, and this side, my right side is now my support side. So that means this arm is trying to make sure this weight is supported, the elbow isn't going to bend so the weight doesn't come in my face, and I'm trying to keep that shoulder set. I'm not trying to let my arm move around. You should always be pointing to the ceiling. With my support leg or my foot flat on the floor, I'm going to try and keep this leg in approximately the same position and that leg bent to about 90 degrees. From here when we start, I'm going to have my left arm and my left leg out to 45, and I'm not doing a sit-up, I'm not sitting straight up, I'm rolling on to my left elbow. From here we come up onto the left hand, right hip to the ceiling, left leg sweeps through. And from here, I'm going to come into a nice lunge position. So I've got to make sure those legs are straight and on train tracks. And from there, I drive off the lead leg and stand up. The way down is the same as the way up. Knee down, hand down, leg through, bum down, elbow down, lay down. So we're going to do 1 rep on one side, 1 rep on the other. And as we go through those 5 sets, trying to get progressively tougher. When we come to the one-arm ring rows today, what I said is versus like a dumbbell bent over row or a single arm barbell row, or even like a Meadows row, if you know what a Meadows row is, the ring adds an anti-rotational component to it. So that means I've got to engage the abs a little bit more to stop myself from wiggling around. When I set up, I want that strap to come straight down and through the arm. So it should be lining up with my shoulder. From here, I'm going to have a nice wide base of support. Quads are tight, glutes are tight, abs are tight. I'm going to drive the elbow back and bring the chest to the ribs. So it should be nice and smooth as I drive the elbow back and bring the hand to the chest, and then come down to the straight arm. What I'm trying to avoid is any kind of rotation in either direction as I'm doing my one-arm ring row. Trying to keep everything as tight as possible. I like to have my hand on my chest so I can kind of see my elbow in my periphery and see if my elbow is wiggling around anywhere as I do my rows. So I've got 90 seconds to do a Turkish Get-Up on one side and then the other. I've then got 90 seconds to do 8 on one arm and then 8 on the other with our one-arm ring rows. And if we can, try and make both exercises more challenging as we go across those 5 sets. So today for our conditioning piece, we are doing 4 Tabata intervals back to back, or back to back to back to back, I believe technically. Is that enough backs? Maybe. With our Tabata intervals, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to spend 4 minutes in each one of these. So I'm not going to alternate exercises. I'm not going to do Z press, bicycle abs, hammer curls, hollow hold. I'm not going to cycle through them. I'm going to spend 4 minutes on each one of those exercises and then move on to the next one. So, the idea with all of these is normally a Tabata interval is just 4 minutes and you're done. We're looking to use that muscular endurance format that works very well with Tabata intervals to just create a 16-minute long workout for ourselves today. So in my first 4 minutes, or my first 8 intervals of 20 seconds of work followed by 10 seconds of rest, I'm going to do some Z press. So we're going to go over how to do that in just a second. And then without any rest, as soon as that last 20-second interval of work is done, there's a 10-second rest, and then we go immediately into bicycle abs, which we'll be doing for 8 intervals of 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest. Then immediately into hammer curls, and then from there, last but not least, into a hollow hold. So 16 minutes of Tabata interval fun. So let's spend a little bit of time looking at all 4 of those exercises. The Z press, fantastic little exercise to kind of isolate the upper body and our pressing mechanics. With this little straddle position, it really means we can't get the legs to do any sneaky work. We often talk here at the 4 Bells about sneaky push pressing, where you don't even realize you're doing it, but your legs are like, I'm going to help you. The good thing about sitting in this position, no leg drive. The bad thing is that it's very easy to lose postural position. So I've got to make sure I keep the abs nice and tight as we're doing our Z press. So you can use 2 dumbbells, 2 kettlebells, mixed match dumbbell and a kettlebell. You can use an empty barbell, but don't go too crazy with the weight because we're going to do a fair amount of reps across our 4-minute Tabata interval. So pressing overhead, back down to the shoulders. It's no more complex than that. 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest, 8 times in the Z press.
Bicycle abs, pretty straightforward, but they can be kind of turned into a bullshit exercise if you're not careful. You need to make sure you're very purposeful with how they're done. Bicycle abs can turn into a bit of a ridiculous exercise if you don't do them properly. So how do I do them properly? I'm going to come into a little bit of a hollow body hold position. I'm going to bring one knee up and extend one leg straight. From here, hands behind the head, I'm going to bring my left elbow to meet my right knee, and then my right elbow to meet my left knee. Noticing how I am moving nice and smooth. I'm not flailing around when I'm doing my bicycle abs. Slow and sexy wins the race. 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest, 8 times. For the hammer curls, in an ideal world, we have 2 dumbbells. That's what ideally what we're looking for when we're doing our hammer curls. Of course, if you don't have 2 dumbbells, you could use an empty barbell. It's okay, I know they're not hammer curls, they're just regular curls on a barbell, but don't worry about it. If you, I'd probably say it's very difficult to hold onto a kettlebell with that weight away from you and away from the hand. That would be very challenging, but maybe doable. Or you could use a band. Or if you're very fancy, you could use a Swiss or a football bar if you have very fancy barbells at home, like we do here at the 4 Bells. If you have a post, or the edge of a door frame, or something to lean up against, use it. Ideally, that's going to minimize any chances of weird, excessive body language when we start to get a bit fatigued. So I'm going to lean in against this post, make sure my bum and my back, and even if you want to, rest the head against the post, just make sure we're not smacking the head against the post, which I have seen happen over the years. Funny for me, not funny for you. All we're going to do is think hammer, I curl up, head of the dumbbell comes to the front of the shoulder, and then I come down to a straight arm. All I'm trying to avoid here is bringing the elbow too high and turning it into a front rack position. We don't need to be this high. Come down to a straight arm, head of the dumbbell up to the shoulder, nice and smooth, 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest, 8 times. Time to get swole on a Friday, brah. Hollow holds, they're a fun thing. We just did a whole cycle that featured a ton of hollow holds. So in our previous cycle, we only had 3 levels of hollow hold. So let's talk about the potentially 4 levels of hollow hold that you can do in today's Tabata piece. Level number 1, as always, is thinking about pressing the low back down, bracing the abs, reaching forward with the hands, bringing the feet off till the legs are about 90 degrees. This is level 1. Level 2 is one leg straight, so I can hold this for 20 seconds and then go to level 2.5 and go to the other leg for the next 20 seconds. From there, of course, it's level 3, both legs straight. From there, level 4, both arms overhead, still keeping the low back press down, still keeping the abs tight. Pick a level, try and stick with it, even when it gets tough. And if you're feeling really dangerous, make your level harder as you go through your Tabata interval. And if you're feeling psychotic,
Feel free to add a light weight into your hands, and if you've got a friend, see if they can put a plate on your feet. That will make it extremely spicy. Either way, we are doing 4-minute Tabata intervals today. How many intervals is that? What's that? 8 times 4? 16? 32? Is that right? Cameraman's nodding. 32 intervals of 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest. It's going to be glorious. See you soon.